Good morning and welcome to Gen Taub Live. I have more questions than answers for all of you today. And the top question is, what is Donald Trump hiding? That is my number one question for you. And I believe that the American public deserves to see the entire Epstein files because we need to know who exactly are these very powerful and influential men, for the most part, who have participated in what looks to be an international child sex trafficking ring. That is not a stretch to say. Now, that is my first question. And when I pose it that way, it's not even enough. What the American public deserve to also know is what our current president's involvement was and knowledge was of this international child sex trafficking ring. And if you think, whoa, Jen, don't call it an international sex trafficking ring if you don't have the goods. Well, my friends, I brought the receipts. The receipts are in both the indictment as well as, more importantly, the conviction of Ghislaine Maxwell. So I'm going to lay this all out for you. So again, more questions than answers. My other question is, why did Donald Trump's defense attorney, yes, his criminal defense attorney, who has a dual role wearing two hats, he's still Donald Trump's criminal defense attorney, according to filings he recently made. He's still Donald Trump's private attorney, I should say, his former criminal defense attorney and his current private attorney, who's wearing a second hat of Deputy Attorney General of the United States. So complete conflict of interest, right? As the second in line of the Department of Justice, he's supposed to be working for us and prosecuting crimes. But his primary role and why he was put in this job by Donald Trump was because he was Donald Trump's defense attorney, who, by the way, lost the criminal case for which Donald Trump was found guilty by a jury and ultimately convicted and sentenced. Okay. So Todd Blanche, my big question among questions is, why did Donald Trump's personal attorney fly down to Florida, to Tallahassee, and meet with convicted child sex offender Ghislaine Maxwell? Why did he meet with her? Not in prison. They let her out of prison to come to the U.S. Attorney's office in Florida with her lawyer. Why did he meet with her? Why her? Why now? The reasoning that they give is unacceptable. So why are they meeting? My hypothesis, which is not a stretch, is that they are meeting with her to come up with some kind of exoneration story so that Ghislaine Maxwell can say, oh, nothing to see here. I believe, and this is another question, what was in the box that she brought back to the prison? I believe that she was given, this is my hypothesis, copies of every, among other things, copies of every single document that mentions Donald Trump so that she can explain away what those mentions are. And if there are any accusations against him, she can say, oh, no, those aren't true. And why do I think that's the case? Because she's committed perjury before, because she's in prison and her co-conspirator was murdered in prison, because nobody wants to stay in prison for 20 years, because she's shameless. And she doesn't actually think that these children who she went out and hunted down outside of schoolyards and at schools, at summer camps. Actually, we have an example of Interlochen in Michigan, which is a boarding school and a summer camp, that she went out and recruited girls of the age of 14 to 17 to satisfy her boyfriend's sexual needs. And she thought of them as garbage because they were not upper class like her. These girls were disposable. She used them and then threw them away. Or after they sort of aged out or were no longer novel for Jeffrey Epstein, then they just became part of the recruiting team. It was like a pyramid pedophile sex trafficking scheme, and it was international. So, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell knows everything. She knows literally where all the bodies are buried and all the secrets are. So, job number one for Donald Trump's defense attorney is to defend him from criminal charges that could be brought against him based on his behavior in the 1990s through 2004. And why am I saying that time frame? Well, if you look both at the indictment and later at the evidence brought before the jury, and I'll be showing you those documents, the time frame for Ghislaine Maxwell's charges and convictions were 1994 through at least 2004. I think you heard me there. 94 through 2004. That was the exact window when Donald Trump was palling around with Epstein. Now, you may notice, and this is curious, but I'll explain it, that in Epstein's charges, right, he was indicted and then he died in prison mysteriously, either wasn't watched over and was permitted to commit suicide or he was killed. We don't know. The family's, not coroner, but the family hired someone to look at the autopsy report, and they think it was closer to signs of murder. The official story is suicide. Either way, it was allowed to happen. So Epstein, in his federal case, the charges for his recent federal case were a different time frame. And that is because he was already given immunity for the earlier time period because of that bizarre settlement back in Florida. At any rate, that is what is going on. Ghislaine was in the belly of the beast. She's a convicted sex trafficker. So why are they meeting with her? There's only one good reason. It is to exonerate Donald Trump through lies, or maybe through legit explanations, to make it look not only like any allegations against him aren't true, but maybe even to decode the birthday letter, trying to make it sound like it isn't what it seems, which is a secret they shared about abusing girls. Okay. So that is what is happening. So I got a lot of questions about that. So we're going to start there. So let me, because I'm going to fill in some of the answers to these questions. Also, let me just back up for a bit. After we do this, actually, before we do this, before we answer those questions, instead of me highlighting Ghislaine Maxwell right now and the absolute bullshit cover up they're engaging with her, I want to bring forward once again victim Maria Farmer. Because I showed you some slides involving Maria on Monday. I talked about, this is the woman who was in her 20s when she came to work for Jeffrey Epstein to apparently curate art for him, because they had seen Epstein had purchased some of her artwork at a gallery, and then was recruited allegedly to be his assistant. At the end of the day, she witnessed horrific activity. She was herself sexually attacked and assaulted by Ghislaine and Epstein. She was ogled over by Donald Trump in his office, and we can talk a little bit more about that to remind you again. And that was revealed by the New York Times this week. And she also, as she had described last night on Jen Psaki's show, this is Maria Farmer, that she's been kind of the den mother of the younger girls because she was older than any of the youngest one. Let me also say that she was the first person to report Jeff Epstein in 1996. And then later, I think in 2000, they came back to speak with her. Or 2010, I think is what it was. I might be getting these dates wrong. But right now, she has a lot to say. And if they really wanted to if Todd Blanche really wanted to get to the bottom, if the Justice Department really wanted to understand whether there were people who were still culpable, who could be tried, if they wanted to get to the bottom of what is going on or what happened here, Maria Farmer should have been the person they spoke with, but no. Let me play this.
Victims who are now deceased and the victims that are very much alive. And I want to get justice for all of them. I feel that for my little sister to have gone through what she went through and to have had to testify against Maxwell and then have to suffer, and there are others that I love very much who are suffering this right now about Maxwell. It's completely unacceptable. Why would Maxwell be given a voice when she is a convicted pedophile? It's been very difficult, and I appreciate the question. I appreciate you asking.
Of course, and I think we're all grateful for you having the courage to be here and tell your story and be out there. And let me ask you, because this is one of the reasons I think it's so important to hear from people like you who are so courageous. I mean, you and your sister, as you just referenced, Annie, were the first survivors to come forward and try to tell the authorities about what Epstein and his associates were doing. You first went to the NYPD in 1996, then the FBI. You said you felt like you weren't taken seriously.
Right.
You've repeated that.
I was dismissed.
Right. You were now suing the federal government, accusing it of negligence and failing to protect victims of sexual assault. And I just wanted our viewers to be aware of all of that and all the time you've spent on this and trying to get this story told. Tell us more about the story you told to the police.
Well, when I called, I told them I was reporting kind of an international pedophile, and I called it child pornography ring because they didn't call it CSAM yet. But that part is one of the most important parts to me because some photographs that were personal photographs of mine that I used for working from, not to copy exactly, but they were anatomy studies for my art. And I was doing these series of paintings for the movie As Good as It Gets. This wasn't for me. It wasn't for Epstein. It was actually for a major producer. And because of being, held captive, I didn't get to finish that. But basically, those photographs are a permanent thing that Ghislaine Maxwell stole from the basement at Leslie Wexner's guest house. And those photographs are a permanent way that my sisters are being abused and that I'm being abused. And so when I told the federal government, I said, this really frightens me because I believe if they did this to us, they're doing it to everyone. And I see a lot of children coming in allegedly for Victoria's Secret modeling or for modeling for Katie Ford. They had all these model scouts around them, Trump, all these people, and they were allegedly auditioning models. But for Victoria's Secret, the girls didn't have any breasts. I didn't understand. And so basically, it's been very an arduous journey over 29 years of just trying to get people to hear me. So I'm so grateful that you're bringing attention to this evening.
Nope.
That is so hard to hear. It's so hard to hear. It's so hard to see when I see people I respect on Blue Sky Social saying, why didn't anyone report this? This was being reported. She, as I showed you earlier this week, she has been trying to get attention to this for nearly 30 years. And I don't mean just with the police. This was reported even, on the news years ago. I showed you an episode from David Pakman. He reported this stuff out in 2016. Some of us weren't listening, others were, right? The fact that Donald Trump was a misogynistic, racist sex predator was known even before he came down that escalator. I just want to be absolutely clear. And for some people, that was insignificant. They wanted their tax cuts. They wanted their white supremacy, what have you. For others, that is was and is a feature and not a bug, because there are people in this world who believe that they are entitled to the bodies of girls and women, and that our consent doesn't matter because we are property for either sexual satisfaction or procreation of the white, quote unquote, master race. I'm just telling you what I am seeing in the ideology around us. And we need to reject all of this. So when we have a victim speak, which is the people who we should be listening to, it flips the script. It says these are real people. They haven't gone away. There are thousands of them. And they deserve justice. Maria wants her files back. The good news is that Ayanna Pressley, the representative, was also on the show that night with Jen Psaki. And I imagine that Maria Farmer met her in the green room, because now there is a plan to have Maria come speak before Congress. Why now? My fear is that this story did not get pushed as much as it could, because it wasn't just Donald Trump, but it was also Bill Clinton. And when Hillary Clinton ran against Donald Trump, because she was still married to Bill Clinton, and because there were credible allegations against Bill Clinton of sexual assault, okay, as well as connections to Jeff Epstein, this stuff got swept under the rug. Now, I don't think any of this is Hillary's fault, the misbehavior of her husband. But we, speaking as a Democrat, never fully grappled with the fact that he was and is terrible baggage for us. I voted for Bill Clinton the first time he ran. That was 1992. In 1996, I left that top line blank. I'm telling you. So we all as a society need to reckon with the fact that, and also Bill Clinton was a person who helped massively deregulate Wall Street and helped lead to the crash, which victimized the ordinary people in this country, lost their homes, lost their jobs. Wall Street got their bonuses. I think we need to think about this particular abuse, sexual abuse of girls and young women, as part and parcel of an elite mindset where the laws don't apply to them. We've talked about this idea that if you're white, wealthy, and well-connected, law protects you, protects your assets, protects your liberty, regardless of what you do. But if you're the rest of us, law binds us and restricts us. And that is when you look at something like child trafficking and you see, especially the Republican Party, because that's what's happening here, and Donald Trump trying to cover that up. And this is considered one of the most evil things in society, right? Across cultures, across the nation, across history. And they're even covering this up. You've got to see this connected with the fact that that's why they're cutting Head Start. And that's why they're cutting public television, including Sesame Street. And that's why they're cutting Medicaid, which will hurt kids and families. Because these people don't care about us. We are disposable to them. It's all written here, and it is all connected. Now, before I show you the Ayanna Pressley clip, I'm going to share another video of Maria Farmer. And this is, she was on CNN, and she is being asked some more questions here about why now and what she has to say. Let me play this.
Epstein, you say that he was present very regularly. How close were they, as far as you were able to tell?
Well, like Epstein said, he inherited him in the divorce. You know, he said, basically, you're going to see us together all the time. We're fixtures, because in the divorce, I inherited Trump and Ghislaine inherited Ivana. So he said, you're not going to see him at the house the way you see Ivana, and you're not going to see her at the offices the way you see Trump. And, you know, it was just It was a known thing, like among the staff and everyone, that they were best friends. And Epstein bragged about it. And I gave up 30 years to report this. And it's a very serious thing to fight the government. You know, it's been unbelievable. I've been fighting 2 cancers because of it.
Maria, when we reached out to the White House for a comment, they responded, and I'll just read for you what they said.
Okay.
Quote, the president was never in Epstein's office, and in fact, the president kicked him out of his club for being a creep. They then say that Trump, they're clear there. They say he was never in Epstein's office, which, of course, from the original incident that you're talking about is where this occurred, according to your recollection, at the Helmsley building in New York.
He was absolutely in the offices.
So what do you say when they give a response like this?
Yes. I say that they're being disrespectful to the fact that I have given up my entire life for this case just to have it investigated. And I'm really sorry for him that he's caught, but, you know, I don't know what to say to that. He's lying. I don't appreciate it. He was absolutely at the offices, and it was 9 o'clock at night. I thought it was inappropriate. But also, they were best friends at the time. So what I say to that is, I don't think he's really responding to the fact. And what does he mean, the offices? He needs to be specific, because he was in the Helmsley Palace offices. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate so much both of your time. And Maria, your choosing to speak out. I know that time may make some things easier and others perhaps even harder. So
that was on with Aaron Burnett. I really like how she says he is lying. He is lying. Okay. Let me also now play Ayanna Pressley. We will, of course, get back to Ghislaine Maxwell, but she doesn't deserve to be centered in this story. Here we go.
I've been doing the advocacy for survivors' justice for all my life. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse and sexual violence, and it is a life sentence. I think about what I experienced every single day. And I knew that's true for every survivor. When you are violated, when you are groomed, when you are exploited, when you are preyed upon, when you are violated as a child, it changes you at your core on a cellular level. It is a life sentence. And so for those cynics or political watchers who see this as political gamesmanship or sport, it is certainly not that for me. Or those who would say that this is a distraction and we have better things that we could be working on. No. This healing, transparency, accountability for these survivors is important, and they deserve it, and it is long overdue.
Whew, that's a lot. Okay, so let's now turn to what happened yesterday, right? What I believe is an effort to create an illusion of exoneration for Donald Trump and God knows what else. And so let me show you what went down yesterday. I'm going to share this. Okay. What you're looking at here is a photograph of Ghislaine Maxwell after she had her meeting with Todd Blanche, the man wearing 2 hats, Donald Trump's defense attorney, as well as Deputy Attorney General. And you see that at this point, she is being escorted from a car, and she is going to be handed a box. You're going to see this in a moment. She's going to be headed back into prison. Here she is. So if you see this, she's wearing these, she's wearing, she's kind of going in through the gate at that point. The white car is there. There's a woman wearing pink, and next to her is Ghislaine in this sort of salmon colored shirt and khaki pants. Now we see her here carrying a white, probably banker's box or some other kind of crate. The way she's carrying it, it's somewhat heavy. You can see her arms kind of bent to hold it up, but maybe not super heavy. It's probably filled with papers. And here she is. This is what she looks like when she is in prison. Okay, so who is she, right? They're trying to position her like she was a victim. But let's be clear what a jury found. Okay, so let me back out of this so you can see this. So this is the announcement from when she was convicted and sentenced. And I believe the sentencing was in 2021. So this says Damian Williams, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, announced that Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced today in Manhattan Federal Court. By the way, this is the press release from the DOJ. Sentenced today in Manhattan Federal Court by U.S. United States Circuit Judge Allison Nathan to 240 months in prison for her role in a scheme to sexually exploit and abuse multiple minor girls with Jeff Epstein over the course of a decade. Maxwell was previously found guilty on December 29, 2021, following a 1-month jury trial of conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sexual acts, conspiracy to transport minors to participate in illegal sexual acts, transporting a minor to participate in illegal sexual acts, sex trafficking conspiracy, and sex trafficking of a minor. And here's a time frame, just so you know what a monster she is. From at least 1994 up to and including in or about 2004, Ghislaine Maxwell assisted, facilitated, and participated in Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of minor girls by, among other things, helping Epstein to recruit, groom, and ultimately abuse victims known to Maxwell and Epstein to be under the age of 18. The victims were as young as 14 years old when they were groomed and abused by Maxwell and Epstein, both of whom knew that they were victims were in fact minors. As part and in furtherance of their scheme to abuse minors, Maxwell and Epstein enticed and caused minor victims to travel to Epstein's residences in different states, which Maxwell knew and intended would result in their grooming for and subjection to sexual abuse. I am not going to read all this out loud because I find it really disturbing, but you can rewind and look at this slide. And what is clear in this first paragraph is that there was inappropriate touching and abuse of these minors, in that Ghislaine participated. She was not just watching, but she was a participant in that. The second paragraph, I'm okay with reading. And it says that in the earlier phase of the conspiracy, from at least approximately 1994 through approximately 2001, right, the earlier part, Maxwell and Epstein identified vulnerable girls, typically from single mother households and difficult financial circumstances. This earlier phase required the defendant, meaning Ghislaine and Epstein, to identify one girl at a time to target for grooming and abuse. In the later phase, from approximately 2001 until at least approximately 2004, Maxwell and Epstein enticed and recruited and caused to be enticed and recruited minor girls to visit Epstein's Palm Beach residence to engage in these sex acts. And they would give them hundreds of dollars in cash. Anyway, then we talked about, at the very end, this says, in this way, Maxwell and Epstein created a network of underage victims for Epstein to sexually exploit. Okay, so let's be clear. At the center of this conspiracy was Jeffrey Epstein. This is his prison photo, booking photo. We saw Ghislaine's. And this was when he, as you know, he died in suicide at the Metropolitan Correction Center in New York in 2019 while he was awaiting trial. So this was before she was tried. Okay, I want to share with you, because I mentioned this before, something a little bit unusual. This is just one page of the grand jury indictment of Epstein. This indictment from 2019, shortly before he killed himself in prison, so they say. So this is just count one, but I want you to see the time frame, because this is a time frame of this indictment from 2002 up to and including at least about 2005. So the reason why I point that out is because he had been given some kind of immunity, as you know, which was crazy, for actions taking place before he served time in prison. And I know that he served time in 2008, but the allegations probably predated that. So I'm not exactly sure if there is an overlap, but you can see that with Ghislaine, it was 94 to 2004. Here, we have 2002. So it's a bit later in the process. Okay. So let's now talk about who exactly. We know who Ghislaine is, a convicted sex offender who recruited these young women. And I just want to say something before we talk about Todd Blanche. In watching some of the interviews last night with Maria Farmer, one thing that impressed me the most is how much of a monster she explained Ghislaine was. Because if you think about this, this makes a lot of sense. If you were a 14 or 15-year-old girl walking home from school in New York or at a restaurant or working a job at Mar-a-Lago, as was the case, and a man walked up to you, a man in his 40s or 50s walked up to you and started talking with you, you would walk the other way, right? Everybody understands stranger danger. But what if a lovely, wealthy woman, the kind that you see at the job where you work or fancy restaurants in New York, well-dressed, British accent, walked up to you and said, "You're really pretty," or something. And a girl who's young and vulnerable, but knows that maybe she's a little pretty, is happy to hear that, starts chatting her up, offers her, says you're connected with Victoria's Secret, other modeling agencies. Would you like to do that? Creates a relationship with her. And then brings her to this mansion and just says, "Oh, can you just give this guy a massage?" And maybe thinking it's a shoulder rub, back rub. And then all of a sudden the girl is trapped there and thinking a lot of things like, they're offering me money for this massage. Now it's gotten really weird and creepy, but what do I do about this? Plus, maybe my mom needs money. You can see what happened and how she got them there. Without Ghislaine, as Maria Farmer said, there could be no Jeff Epstein. He would have been stopped if he were out acting creepy on the street. But the creepiness happened in a multi-million-dollar home, not on the street. So he gets away with it for years. Okay, so let me just say, who met with Ghislaine Maxwell outside of the prison and made sure she got a box of documents? That would be right there, Donald Trump's ex-defense attorney. This photo, this news article is from this March, not that many months ago, when the Senate confirmed Todd Blanche to be the Deputy Attorney General. That's the headline. But that's not what this photo is. This is the photo of Donald Trump being upset with Todd Blanche having an upside down smile. Why? This is the very day, this is moments after a jury convicted Donald Trump in New York of falsifying business records. This was the 34 felony counts, right? Jury conviction, unanimous jury. And this is their press release. So just so you understand, that's what happened. And also, I think it's kind of unbelievable to think about this, but do you know when the conviction happened of Donald Trump? I just looked this up and I want to make sure I am right. I had just looked this up this morning and it was, the timing is unbelievable. May 30th, 2024. Just about a year ago, May 30th, 2024. What's interesting is last May is when he was convicted on 34 felony counts. I can't believe this guy was elected after that. I can't believe the Democratic Party couldn't figure out a way to go on the attack. I can't believe that people were still supporting this disgusting man. But what's interesting is last May, he's convicted. And a year later, what is happening with Donald Trump? His Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and his former defense attorney, because I believe Todd Blanche was in the room, were briefing him on the fact that he is mentioned multiple times in the Epstein files. This guy gets away with unbelievable amounts of crap. Okay, so that's who met with her. Now let's back up. I'm going to see if you look at this. Okay, so what did he report after Todd Blanche met with Maxwell? Okay, let me read you this piece. Maxwell had been outside the prison walls for hours as she and her lawyer met with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche inside the U.S. Attorney's office in Tallahassee earlier Thursday. Sources familiar with the matter told the Washington Post. Today, I met with Ghislaine Maxwell, and I will continue my interview of her tomorrow. The Department of Justice will share additional information about what we learned at the appropriate time. Does that sound like you are preparing? Oh my goodness. Thank you, Electron Creations. Does that sound like you are preparing when you're interviewing someone in prison, that you're preparing for additional charges against somebody you'll share at the appropriate time? Doesn't sound like that. What else did we find out? Well, here's what we know. This is, I want to share with you, Donald Trump with Ghislaine. Just some pictures. Okay. We also found out that Todd Blanche is buddies, which is not that unusual. Lawyers know each other. Todd Blanche was a defense attorney, is buddies with Ghislaine Maxwell's current defense attorney. That in fact, they were on a podcast together at some point. And that it's looking pretty good. According to Ghislaine's attorney, he was spotted giving a thumbs up to someone, and he's really happy with how things are going. Now, thank you, Michael. Oh my gosh, you are so kind. The biggest compliment I think I can get, and it's what Michael McAndrews just gave me, is that you are a wonderful teacher. I learned by teaching. I got to say, when I was a little kid, I used to play teacher. Even when I didn't know how to write, play school, I would make these loops. We'd have chalkboards and we'd make these loops on it. The other thing I got to tell you, because this is sort of fitting, is when I was, I think, around 4 years old, when I was in preschool. I remember it would have been 4 or 5, could have been 5. I remember that the Brady Bunch was a popular show on television in the 70s. And I was in a playground. All the kids were playing around, and I organized the kids. I said, let's play Brady Bunch. But instead of demanding that I get to be Marsha, which is like the choice role, even a 5-year-old knew that, I was the director, and I told everyone which part they had to have. So some things never change. Okay. So will this work? Is Donald Trump going to be able to get away with this? I have no idea. But what I am seeing from people like podcaster Andrew Schultz, who has 3 million followers on YouTube, a little more than yours truly, which reminds me, please follow, or please subscribe. That's what we call followers here. It's free. Okay, so Andrew Schultz, who is someone who, although he'd been a Democrat, did have Donald Trump on his show, kind of the way Joe Rogan did. And although he said he wasn't supporting Donald Trump, he certainly normalized him, right? And so this is what he has to say, right? He's got a big audience. Let's play it.
Trump is like, hey, the base thinks vaccines are fucked up. RFK, get in there.
January
Research
6th,
the vaccine.
they want him out.
They want him out. We're putting him out. And this, he is rebuking the base, like almost like spitting in their face. Like they are asking for it. He campaigned on it. He puts Bongino and Cash in there, which might be the stupidest thing in the history of the world. Like, why would you put the two guys that have nonstop pounded the pavement talking about how we're going to expose this Epstein thing, and the second they get in there, like, you better shut the fuck up.
Yeah, to shut him up.
Go on Rogan, lie. Like, it is a very peculiar thing. It worked in that I think it moved any of the smoke off of Trump, because at least for me, I was like, there's no way that he's involved if he's putting Bongino and Cash in, who have campaigned on exposing it. Like, why would you hire those guys or appoint those guys, right? So I'm like, he can't be. But the fact that he will not touch this, and then this last week, him doing the bullshit distractions.
Bro.
dropping the MLK file. Like, who asked for the MLK
Yeah,
file?
yeah.
Who asked for MLK?
You know what's funny is I'm not a huge conspiracy theorist, and I was initially like, the Epstein thing for me was just the last straw in terms of you not getting things done. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure there's some smoke, they'll release it. But the more they're doing to hide it, the more I'm like, oh, they're hiding something crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily, I was like, there's probably
The
something.
second he started talking about Obama, I was like, oh, he's guilty.
Yeah.
Also, like, why are you talking about Obama and treason? You got a guy who has sex with teenagers that you are protecting.
Also, some of the lies are
other
so
pedophiles.
Yeah.
Trump is protecting other pedophiles.
Facts.
Like, that's what.
Trump is protecting other pedophiles. What he means is other than Epstein. But what I mean is he's also protecting himself. At this point, either Donald Trump did genuinely engage in sexual exploitation of minors or trafficking, or he is part of the bribery scheme or the money scheme or something, or all of the above. I don't know, but this doesn't look right. The other thing I want to add now, and we're going to get off of this story into, we're going to get into some good news in a moment. But I want to share, the Wall Street Journal keeps dropping some more stories. So here we go. Wall Street Journal dropped the story yesterday. I should say published. That's what I mean. That's kind of the kids speak. Okay, so Jeffrey Epstein's birthday book included letters from Bill Clinton and Leon Black. Well, we knew that, but now they're sharing what those letters said. So let me read you from the Wall Street Journal story from last night. The biggest name in Jeffrey Epstein's birthday book in 2003 was a past president rather than a future one. Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, was keen for Bill Clinton and other bold-faced names to submit letters for the special gift, according to people involved in putting it together. In the end, she was successful. The leather-bound album, assembled before Epstein was first arrested in 2006, included a page with a single paragraph in Clinton's distinctive scrawl. It's reassuring, isn't it, to have lasted as long across all the years of learning and knowing, adventures and, illegible word, and also to have your childlike curiosity, the drive to make a difference, and the solace of friends. Now, I find that not as plain vanilla as some people do. I think childlike curiosity is really creepy there, but okay. And then here is a photo of 9 different people among the many who were included in this birthday book. And I'm going to do what the Wall Street Journal did. I'm going to start at the top left and go clockwise. Top left is Ace Greenberg, right? It was huge. Ace Greenberg, there's many people with last name Greenberg, but I believe Ace Greenberg is the Alan Ace Greenberg was the insurance guy, I believe. AIG, maybe you can check that in this top going clockwise in the center square, not center square, but the top row center is Les Wexner of Victoria's Secret and Limited fame, the one who gave Jeff Epstein a free mansion in New York, or for $1 or something like that. Then we've got Jean-Luc Brunel in the top right corner, who was known for having a modeling or talent agency. And I believe he was also either indicted or convicted or accused of child sex trafficking, etc., or at least trafficking of young women. Then we go below that and we get Jimmy Kane of Bear Stearns, who was smoking doobies and on the golf course when Bear Stearns was collapsing. Then below, which I was mostly shocked about, is clothing designer Vera Wang. Then go to the left, the bottom row center, and we have Mort Zuckerman. I feel like Mort Zuckerman is a journalist. And then on the left, of course, is Alan Dershowitz. Then let's just be clear, not everybody in the book was at the same section or same level of a relationship. Clinton and Trump were listed under the friends group, along with 20 other associates, such as Leon Black, Mort Zuckerman, former Victoria's Secret leader Les Wexner, and Allen Ginsberg, a UK politician by the name of Peter Mandelson, and the late Jean-Luc Brunel. Okay, so under the business was Ace Greenberg and Jimmy Kane. And I think it's because at one point, Jeff Epstein had worked at Bear Stearns before he left after some accusations of fraud. There were other people in other categories like Science, Brooklyn, and Family. So just so you know, both Clinton and Trump were in that top tier. Okay. So the Wall Street Journal reminds us that they had published an article last, I think, Thursday maybe, or I guess whatever the 17th was, sometime last week. The Journal published an article about the letter Trump signed, right? About, this wonderful secret they shared, and then is suing them, the Wall Street Journal. And Dow Jones says we have full confidence in the rigor and accuracy of our reporting and will vigorously defend against any lawsuit. So despite the multi-billion-dollar lawsuit filed against Dow Jones and Rupert Murdoch, they're still publishing stories. They're still doing it. Okay. One other thing about this topic before I get to some really happy news and then some real crazy stuff that Donald Trump is doing. Okay, I'm going to share this with you. I didn't share it yesterday, but during the show, it was around June 6th or 7th when Elon Musk got in that dust up with Donald Trump. While Donald Trump was at a press conference lashing out at Elon said, time to drop the really big bomb. Real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT. And then he said, mark this post for the future. The truth will come out. And certainly the truth is coming out. Although now Elon Musk is suppressing any mention of the Epstein files, especially in connection with Donald Trump on Twitter. And yes, yesterday, Donald Trump said, oh, I never wanted to hurt Elon's business. It's good that he gets all these government subsidies. So we can kind of see what's going on there. Keep your mouth shut and I won't destroy you. It's kind of what that is going on. Everybody is going to be getting an offer they cannot refuse from Donald Trump. And the question is, are there more courageous people and more intrepid reporters who will not let this story die for the victims and for the rest of us? Now, let me tell you the happy story. I've got an update. So remember when I shared with you that I have this sort of friendship, at least a parasocial friendship, I guess, with someone on social media on Blue Sky. And his name is Michael J. McClure. And he has the handle MJM Images. And he's fabulous. I used to follow him when we were both on Twitter. But anyway, every single day since Andre Jose Hernandez Romero was in captivity at CCOT, he posted something about him. And remember, Andre Jose Hernandez Romero is the hairdresser and makeup artist who was from Venezuela, lived in the United States, and they claimed was part of a Venezuelan gang, which is crazy, and sent him to El Salvador to CCOT, a prison where people never got out until now, right? Kilmar Abrego Garcia was the first person to ever get out. But yes, Andre is free. So I want you to see what Michael J. McClure used to say every day. Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, I remember you, even if I do not know how to articulate my horror, rage, and sorrow at your treatment by my government. No one has heard from you in 97 days, right? This was a while ago. As vigil, I am posting a photo or video of you every day until you are returned from El Salvador. That's what Michael J. McClure was doing. And then this is yesterday. And this is, he put a lot of photos up. Michael J. McClure did. And this is a quote from Andre Jose Hernandez Romero. This is him being reunited. On the left is his best friend. I don't know who the person is on the right, maybe a family member. And it says, it fills me with so much peace, so much comfort, so much tranquility that I was never alone from day one. There were many people who worried for me. Okay, get out the Kleenex. So what happened in the 125 days? He was detained in this concrete, I'm reading this article, detained in inside an El Salvador concrete fortress built to disappear people. Andre is finally home in Venezuela, alleging he was tortured, sexually abused, and denied food while detained under a Trump administration deportation order that erased him from society. Andre was a group of 250 Venezuelan men who were expelled and sent to this gulag. Okay, now let me just add, he described this, he's 32 years old. Andre described this as an encounter with torture and death. In his town in Venezuela on Wednesday, he described how he and others were beaten, shot with rubber bullets, and confined in dark cells before they were finally freed last Friday. And he said, many of our fellows have wounds from the nightsticks. They have fractured ribs, fractured fingers and toes, marks from the handcuffs. Others have marks on their faces and chests from the projectiles. Here he is. Michael posted this yesterday. Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, after hugging his best friend, who had been relentless in pleading for his cause. And then Michael said, I'll just stop posting these someday, but not today. And then another, God, I love this photo. Here's my last one. He said, I'll just sneak this in here. And here he is. I think these are his parents. Anyway, and the t-shirt says, Libertad para Andre, which means liberty, I think, for Andre. Okay. That helps me get through this terrible time period. People with the courage that someone like Andre had to survive what he survived. Certainly, we can stand up for people who are suffering in the same way in a concentration camp in the Everglades. We are hearing that the prisoners there, remember, who have not been given due process, they've not been accused of any crimes. They were rounded up and put in the Everglades in this concentration camp where they're being fed apparently like animals on their hands and knees. I've heard incredibly horrific stories. We must treat all people with dignity. If someone has committed a crime, they need due process. If they're dangerous predators of children, like Ghislaine Maxwell, and are convicted of such, they should be behind bars. We have definitely two systems in this country. Now, let me share with you what I guess I got two more things. One is my follow the money story. I got two more things before I get to Crazy Town. One is the follow the money story, not the follow the Epstein money story, because we need to do that. And what we do know is that the Treasury Department has the records that Congress needs to see. Well, I guess Sheldon Whitehouse has seen a lot of these, but the public needs to see what the whole story about follow the money and Epstein. We need to know. I care more about that than what is in the disgusting videos and photos of young girls. I want to see the money because that will tell us everything. But what I want to also share with you is, you know, the deal that went through between Paramount and I think I'm going to call them Skyhorse Media, the billionaire's son, Larry Ellison, huge Republican donor, his son, who was given this money to buy Paramount. And there was a little sweetener for Donald Trump. It sure as hell looks like bribery. I'm going to share with you Elizabeth Warren talking about this. There's no one better at following the money than her. Okay, let me do my screen share with you for that. Here we go. And I think I can make this big. Here we go.
Well, just 3 days before it was canceled, Colbert called out Trump and Paramount, which is CBS's parent company, for making a deal that looks like a, quote, big fat bribe. Those were his words. So what's that, quote unquote, potential bribe that Colbert was referring to? Trump filed a sham lawsuit against CBS, but instead of fighting it, CBS's parent company, Paramount, paid Trump $16 million to his future presidential library. So you got to ask, why did Paramount do that if the suit was, quote, meritless? Well, maybe because they needed Trump to approve their multi-billion-dollar merger, which Trump just did. The appearance of this wink-wink deal basically lets every other company and every other billionaire know that Trump is open for business, apparently happy to accept offers in exchange for favors. On top of that, this deal is bad for competition and could make it more expensive for you to stream your favorite TV shows or movies or sports or whatever. So, just like I've been doing for weeks, I'm calling for an urgent, independent investigation into this Paramount deal to see if this was actually bribery. And make no mistake, these CEOs may think that they can get away with anything they want, but they are not immune from the law. Bribery is still illegal. None of us can be silent about this, because you better believe Donald Trump isn't stopping here. Already, he's seemingly running the same play by suing the Wall Street Journal for publishing a story that Trump doesn't like about his parent relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Look, every single one of us needs to show Trump and the CEOs that we see what they are doing, and we will not be silent.
Love her. Love her. I know this, got to do one little quick thing to say. I think you know this, but I just want to let folks know who don't know this about me. Not only was Alan Dershowitz my crim law professor, but when I was a student at Harvard, Elizabeth Warren was my bankruptcy professor. And you know that I think I was less prepared for her class than I was when I had to testify before the Senate Banking Committee when I knew she was going to be asking me questions. So yeah, I take the real world a little more seriously than I did my studies, but oh well. Okay, so I got one more thing before we get into Crazy Town. And this is something I feel really strongly about. It's what's happening in Gaza. And as you know, I found the attack on October 7th unacceptable. The murder and terrorist attack on civilians, the massacre at the Nova Music Festival. And I found it appropriate for the Israeli government to retaliate. And the focus should have been on getting all the hostages back. However, all of that should have been done within weeks, if not months. What is going on now is an actual genocide by Netanyahu's government and funded by the United States. And I have denounced it many times. I want to share for you right now, candidate for Congress in Illinois, Kat Abu-Ghazala. I've mentioned her before in the context when I had Ben Collins on. We spoke about her campaign. And I think I've spoken about her in the context, I hope I have, of people like Zohran Mamdani and other young voices, other people in their 30s or 40s running for office. I'm going to share with you when she was on Abby Phillips holding her own about Gaza. And what I really like about what she's saying is all children's lives matter. No one is dispensable. Let's go.
They get kazams every day in those little towns.
Gaza was under Israeli occupation. It has been under Israeli occupation since 1967. You know, most of the people in Gaza are not from Gaza. They're from families of refugees that were expelled from Israel in 1948. That's where they're there in the first place. Let me let Kat have a word in. Go ahead.
I am from one of those families. My father's parents were Nakba survivors. I do not want Israeli children to live in fear, and I don't want Gazan children to starve to death. And there is no enemy of either state that could want me to wish that or excuse the starvation of children. It is that simple. Food is being blocked. It is being blocked. This is a man-made humanitarian disaster. It could stop at any point. We could be putting pressure on this.
They launched missiles from hospitals. They launched missiles from preschools.
Okay, there is
this is who Hamas is.
There is nothing.
Hold on a
no
second.
agency that
let me
could
just
excuse
ask you
this.
to let me ask you to.
It's I mean, I love what she said. No enemy of any government can convince me that children should suffer. This whole show we've been talking about today is about choosing care, choosing to support children as they grow into adults, as opposed to treating humans, children, young adults, and adults as dispensable, as cannon fodder, as pawns in games over territory, using religious identity as an excuse for war, regardless of religious identity. I've had enough. I have had enough. Okay, so let's get into the crazy town. And let's go ahead. Sorry, I'm going over a tiny bit. It's worth it. Let's do it. I'll make the music part a little louder. Okay. Crazy town is yesterday, when Donald Trump was trying to humiliate Fed Chair Jerome Powell by showing up at the Fed and walking through the construction site. Donald Trump is trying to find a way to convince the public and himself that he can fire Jerome Powell a year ahead of when his term at the Fed, when his chairmanship is up, by claiming that he mismanaged funds. So this is his goal. He's been hitting at it. And the trouble is the math ain't mathing. So let me show you this video. I got two different videos to run through with you, and then the facts. So here we go.
Well, thank you very much. We're looking at the construction, and we're with the chairman, as you know. Chairman, come on over. And we're just taking a look at what's happening. You know, it's a tough construction job. They're building basements where they didn't exist or expanding them, and a lot of very expensive work. There's no question about it. And Tim has been with me for a long time, and you're in charge of the committee.
Indeed. One of the reasons I wanted to see it was the overruns of the expenses, wanted to figure out why.
Yeah. So we're taking a look, and it looks like it's about $3.1 billion. It went up a little bit, or a lot. So the 2.7.
You got to look at Jerome Powell's face. He's just shaking his head at first. Keep watching.
And it's now 3.1.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, I haven't heard that from anybody at the Fed.
Yeah, it just came out.
Our notes had it about 3.1 as well.
3.1.
3.2. This came from us?
Yes.
Watch him study the paper.
You're including the Martin renovation. You just added
our entire capital.
Yeah, you just added in a third building is what that is. That's a third building.
Well, no,
the
but
Martin building.
it's a building that's being built.
No, it's big.
What a fucking pig. I'm sorry, I have to swear right now. Look at his face. You know, in 2 seconds, you get Chairman Powell look at this and said, you've added in a third building, the Martin building. And Trump with this arrogant look, oh yeah, but it's being built now. It's not. Listen to Powell. It was completed 5 years ago. Now, you may say, wait, these numbers are really big about renovation of the Fed. Why am I paying for that? Well, two things. One, the Fed is self-funded with fees from the banks. Two, when you look into this, because the Wall Street Journal has a long story, there's reasons why it's so expensive. It would have been cheaper to build the new building, but you've got an old building with asbestos. You've got the fact that Washington is built on a swamp. I don't think you need those details to know, first of all, that Donald Trump is lying right here because he added in a third building that was completed 5 years ago. Okay.
And it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago.
It's part of the overall work.
But it's
So,
not new.
So we're going to take a look. We're going to see what's happening, and it's got a long way. Do you expect any more additional cost overruns?
Don't expect them. We're ready for them, but we have a little bit of a reserve that we may use, but no, we don't. We expect to be finished in 2027. We're well along, as you can see.
Nice to take these off, everyone.
Okay. So you might think that's really crazy, right? It's a setup. Well, there's more. But let me play you the second video, and then we're going to unpack this, and then we'll go.
Too expensive. Bottom line is this, that Americans deserve to become first-time home buyers. President Trump has created the best economy in the world. The one thing that would make it better is lower interest rates. Full employment is even more possible. Wages rise faster as interest rates come down when your employment is at 4.1% because of your leadership.
Unemployment is at 4.1% because of your leadership. So let's deal with this. Oops. That is a little stupid of him. Let me just show you this. When Tim Scott, who is a senator from South Carolina, I don't know what he's doing over there by flanking Donald Trump. But when he is boasting, you got to look at this slide, you guys. He's boasting, oh, unemployment is at 4.1% because of your leadership. Folks, do you know what unemployment was a year ago? 4.1%. What was it during Biden in 2023? 3.6%. So first of all, it's not great to boast that because of his leadership, it's at 4.1%, but it was also at that before Donald Trump became president, first of all. Secondly, let's go back to some of the other details here. This was the quote, right? It looks like it's about 3.1 billion. It went up a bit, Trump said. So the 2.7 billion is now 3.1. And as the president spoke, Powell shook his head, right? He looks at the paper. Trump takes out the piece of paper and he looks at it, the numbers, and he said, you just added a third building. And Donald Trump said, it's a building that's being built. No, it was built 5 years ago. We finished Martin 5 years ago, Powell shot back. It's part of the overall work. Okay. So, it's just bullshit. And what's refreshing here is Powell just contradicted him in public. Did you notice they weren't even looking at each other? I think this was a trap. I think he came to visit, and I don't think Powell thought all these cameras would be there. I don't think they really needed those hard hats. I think it was all a spectacle. Why? A spectacle to take away from the fact that Donald Trump is in the crosshairs of an investigation into whether he is either a pedophile or covering up for pedophiles or both. That is where we are. We will never drop that story. And with that, have a lovely weekend.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub show.